Right, welcome to the new guest safety officer shorts. In these shorts, I'll be speaking to people who are experts in this field. And the first one I've got is the legendary Sean Gallagher, Sean, who's a self-defense ex-CP officer and expert in his field. Welcome, Sean. Can you give us something about yourself, mate?
Morning, Gary. Yeah, I was over 27, 28 years full-time CPO, bodyguard for those people that know what that is, and 22 years with the same family. I retired about 2 years ago, and now I teach awareness, situation awareness, self-defense, combative, armed and unarmed, including weapons and firearms.
That's brilliant news. So just on the point of your expertise being ex-CP officer, what sort of training did you do just to get into that point?
Constant training, constant refreshers, constant training. The training I did, an awful lot of it went into the physiology of high stress situations, body language, communication, de-escalation, and the last resort has to be the last resort, the physical side. But I've been training in numerous arts since the age of 9. I'm what's classed as, I don't see it, but I'm classed as high level in numerous arts, including combatives, in armed and unarmed combatives. I just trained what worked for me. I took pieces out of 9 different arts that I'm trained in and just took what worked for me as an individual. But the main stuff was the understanding how our body reacts in a high stress situation and communication. That's
cool. So before we go more down that training preparation, understanding the law and self-defense, I mean, can you explain the definitions of reasonable force on that for us?
Yeah, well, reasonable force is down to a judge and jury, but at the end of the day, basically, people have overcomplicated this in courses to make themselves sound clever. It's really simple. Were your actions necessary? Were your actions proportionate to your perceived threat? If they were necessary and they're proportionate to the threat, therefore it's reasonable. Necessary, proportionate, therefore reasonable.
So in your experience, say if someone comes at you with a knife, what's necessary, reasonable, proportionate on that? Would you, on your expertise thing?
Well, if I can't get the hell out of there and de-escalate the situation, then you're governed to use as much force as is deemed necessary. And that then you bring into Article 2 of the Human Rights Act, the positive right to preserve life. So the positive right to preserve life means I can take a life to preserve life if the situation calls for it. But it doesn't mean, oh, he's got a knife, I'm going to take it off and stab him. That's not what it means, and that's what people are teaching, which is wrong. It means I can use maximum force required to defend myself or others. And if that unfortunately results in someone losing their life, then Article 2 of the Human Rights Act, if your actions have been proportionate and they were necessary, will cover you.
And this is the law, isn't it? This is just the law as it stands. This is nothing.
The law this lands, you need to look up the law. Instructors need to learn the law. So many self-defense instructors do not know the law. And you need to understand it. And the best way of self-defense is don't be there. So situational awareness is key and avoidance is key. If you can't avoid, then you must try and communicate, which is de-escalation. And if you can't avoid de-escalate, then you have to use physical force. But you need to be trained correctly to use that type of force. And so
that comes on to my next question, Sean. What sort of training do you think security officers should undergo and prepare for these sort of physical confrontations?
That's such an open question, because everybody has the right as an individual. And so you get all this nonsense at the moment. Everybody must use Krav Maga because Krav Maga is the best. Now, anybody who says one art fits all, I would question them and I would not train with them at all, because that's a very blinkered cult mentality. Everybody's different. So go and train numerous arts. For a security professional, you need to understand trapping, manipulation, disengagement, hold if necessary, control and restraint. But really, in my personal, as a bodyguard, I was never a security officer or a doorman. As a professional bodyguard, I need to learn trapping and striking. I need to learn how to manipulate, and I needed to learn some groundwork. We never, ever, ever want to go on the ground as a CPO, ever. And any professional ex-special forces guy will also tell you, never, ever go to ground. But 75% of instances in the UK go to ground because of the popularity of MMA. So groundwork should be part of your training. But you don't want to stand there trading blows. So you want to learn an art that works for you and train loads of different arts. Never get caught just training one system, because you're going to find yourself in a bit of a cropper. And also understand violence. You know,
do you think that's missing in the security? Do you think people are like the training for the security industry? Do you think they missed that point of violence out, the understanding of violence?
Yeah. I mean, like yourself, Gary, you trained in martial arts since you're 8. I've tried 9 different systems since I'm 53 now. I started when I was 9, so you can do the maths, but don't tell anybody my age. It's in all the systems I've trained, not one single instructor, and I trained to quite a high level. I mean, I'm recognized for the Black Belt Hall of Fame, but none of those martial arts that I trained ever discussed real violence, real street violence, how your body will react in a high stress situation. The fact that most crimes, most attacks on the street are ambush. So you don't have time to prepare for it. You know, you've got the startle flinch reflex, which Tony Blair talks about all the time. You know, he's probably the leading authority on this stuff. Yeah, it's not discussed. And I honestly, from what I've seen, and with the SIA's training system, a lot of the instructors don't understand it. You've got a lot of people teaching who really don't understand what they're talking about.
I fully agree with you, mate. Absolutely, fully agree with you. There's some really big holes in there. So on my next question to you, what preventative measures should a security officer take, or a CPO officer take? What do you think they should, you know, prevent, to try and avoid these situations?
Good planning, good SOPs, standard operating procedures. Awareness is key. If anybody knows anything about the way the body reacts in a perceived threat, your body will react to a threat before the conscious mind even recognizes what that threat is. So awareness is key, because it's the optical nerve center, the amygdala, etc., the release of adrenaline. So really understand the environment you're working in. Pay attention to the environment you're working in. And what's happening a lot in the security that I see, people do, generic risk assessment, but they're not doing constant risk assessments. You know what I mean? Like every time you look around, that should be a risk assessment. You should take in all this information and use it appropriately. People go, oh, right, we've got this going on tonight. And then they just get into a bit of a robotic, I'm just checking passes. But you're not just checking passes. You're checking, you're checking that pass in a security, for example, but you're also checking this body, the body language of the person's pass you're looking at. You're looking at their body language, the way they're talking, the way they communicate with people around them. You know, there's so many signals from body language that aren't taught on any of these courses. You know, in a high stress situation or any conflict situation, we're only taking about 7% of the words used. But so many people are teaching doorman security about communication, but high stress, you need to really focus on your body language, because 55% of the information taken in is how you're standing, how you're holding yourself.
Absolutely, I fully agree with that. I mean, we've been in the game myself, as you know, for 37 years, and if you're not observing and analysing the person in front of you, how they're standing, how they're behaving, the talk pattern, where their hands are, they're not taking that in. It's very, you know, next thing you're the victim.
Yeah, also the only way you can do this is to create space. So many people, you see it all the time, they're talking like this, you know, and it gets the male ego thing. We've all been guilty of it at some stage in our lives, the pigeon chesting, the peacocking. Forget the ego. Ego is the enemy. You want to leave ego completely out of any security work. Step back, create space, assess, make sure you can see the palms of their hands, and communicate in a nice, calm manner. So
leading on to my final question now, we've got police officers and we've got security officers in the UK, or CPO officers as well. I mean, what is the fundamental difference between the two, where we stand on the self-defense point of view?
Self-defense? Well, yeah. We're all governed by the same laws.
Right.
We're all governed by, you know, common law, section 3.1 of the criminal law, article 2 of the Human Rights Act, etc., etc. There's no one that can tell you can't use. No one can tell you can't use force to defend yourself, as long as that force is proportionate and necessary. So there's no difference, really. You can, anybody who's teaching should understand section 3.1 of the Criminal Law Act, okay, which goes into use of force. Now, the difference is, with security, do not get involved with something that doesn't concern you. You see so many people running across the street to deal with something that doesn't concern them. That's what the police are for. And I train a lot of police officers. We have this thing now where you get an awful lot of security officers think they're police officers. You're not. It's two different roles, and you should support each other. The police officers, they know the law. Security officers, you know, have done a very, very basic introduction to security. That is it. They're not encouraged to do any CPD. You know, half the stuff I've seen, this is why I retired from the security industry. I'm qualified to train close protection officers for Highfields. But when you look at what they want to teach, it's irrelevant, and it got no bearing on what I did for 27 years. So I stopped teaching it because it's a lie. A lot of the information in these courses that security officers take is not relevant, or there's not enough information there in regards to their rights and what they should get involved in and what they shouldn't get involved in. I think police officers got a very, very difficult job. And I think security officers in this day and age have got a very, very difficult job because they're not supported by the so-called government bodies, and they don't have the adequate training.
I absolutely agree with you. So we just want to wrap this up now, but just finalising everything. Preparation, training, continuous CPD. What else can a security officer do? Just to finalise this whole thing, Sean, to make them a better person.
Learn empathy. Learn how to communicate properly. Communication is key. A lot of the time, especially as a CPO, if you haven't avoided it and you haven't de-escalated it, you've done something wrong as a CPO. Preparation is key, as anybody will tell you. But you need to let go of the ego. You know, let go of the ego, stop the pigeon chesting if you do that sort of stuff. And really understand it isn't about physical force. Anybody can throw a punch, anybody can pick up a knife. That's why it's so common nowadays. The knife requires zero training, zero planning. You know, anybody can do that. Learn how to create space, learn how to communicate, learn how to assess. More importantly, learn how to remain calm. And that's worked for me, basically. I only pass on what works for me. I don't pass on anybody else's stuff, you know.
I hear you. Well, thanks for summarising that, Sean. Thank you for your time today. It's been really good information you've passed out there. There's lots of information there. If anyone's interested to learn anything more, have you got a website or anything, Sean? Well,
the website's being built, but you can follow us on, if you're on Instagram, I think it's called Avictus Training, AVICTUS Training. I hold numerous seminars up and down the country. We're booking something next year. We start in February the 28th up in Hereford. And I have online training programs starting next year as well. But Avictus Training, or www.avictus.co.uk.
Great stuff, Sean. I shall put that in the link below for the YouTube channel. Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And again, the knowledge has been fantastic. And
you're more than welcome.
And I look forward to seeing you in the future, Sean, once again.
Hey, buddy. Take care, mate. All the best, mate. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.